started my business in the midst of but I'm out of college. I didn't know anybody that did this. I took one course online, basically. Direct mail, cool. Send out a campaign, figured it out. So I knew enough to know if I get a tax delinquent list, send out some mail, people will call me, I'll make them an offer, I'll try to buy some land. I did it, sold that property for $450K altogether. So I ended up netting somewhere between $290 and $300 after real stuff.
That's very convincing to leave your corporate America job.
When you're making 5 times what you made in your W-2, it's like, I think we can make this work.
What's the part no one tells you about mastering sales that makes or breaks your success?
Being the practitioner, doing it, jumping in the seat, making a phone call, that was the fastest way to learn. Because how I view sales is if I have something I need to give someone, and I know when I give someone that thing, their life will be better because of it, I am very confident I can make that sale. I just need to help them realize that.
Ajay is 26 years old, comes from the land subdividing space, and when it dried up, he's kind of switched to distressed deals. His first deal netted him like $54,000, and over the first 6 months in this business, he racked up about $700,000 in equity or profits. That's the model coaching participant, frankly, and he's absolutely killed it. His specialty is sales, though, and if you always wanted to be a better salesperson, I think this is the person you need to talk to. Ajay, welcome.
Thank you. What a touching introduction, my friend.
All the important stuff at once. You built up a pipeline of about $700,000 in profits by age 26. What did it actually cost you to get there?
What did it actually cost me to get there? Man, I'll break this down in a few different ways. There's the easy answer, just here's how much money, right? And then there's the long-winded answer so people understand, right? Anytime you're investing in something, you basically have 2 resources you're trying to trade off between, and it's time versus money, right? And so ideally, you use your money to compress timeline. So obviously, we had the investment of working with y'all in DPA, right? Aside from that, though, to be honest, we already had 2 full-time salespeople on our team. I'm a big fan of paying my salespeople a base. People have conflicting opinions about it. I find I get more buy-in, more retention, less fear of scarcity. We can talk more about that later on in the show. So, I already had the salaries on my payroll, less than 10 grand a month there. Aside from that, though, man, we JV'd our first couple of deals, so cash out of hand was very low. We fronted a couple of notaries, couple $100 each one. And then we had, again, just phone systems, tech. Like, I almost want to say it's a joke in terms of how cheap you can get stuff going. You pull a list, you pay to get that list cleaned up, you have a phone system, and then you hit the phones, either you or your salespeople or both. And we started locking up deals, JV'd with another guy. Almost no cash out of our pocket, man. So it's a couple $1,000 and we were doing deals.
When you look at like a manufacturing business or any of these other businesses out there, it takes so much money. You got to rent real estate. You got to get equipment. You got to hire all these specialists. And here, the barriers to entry seem to be so much lower.
So low.
You buy homes from owners who have many times inherited a mess. What's the wildest conversation you've had with a seller who didn't even know they owned some of the house?
Yeah, man. The wildest one was I was talking to a granddaughter of an original owner, and they basically had no relationship there. And it was interesting because as we dug into it, it ended up not being a deal we wanted to pursue because there was an owner occupant in the house. And I spoke with her, super nice lady, but she had nowhere to go, right? And so she also ended up being, I think, over 65, so she was working with a tax deferral program. Her husband was a vet. And so man, I'm not going to force this lady out of her house, right?
That's the right answer. This isn't the right answer. There are many people that need what you do, but there are also some people that don't. And
100%.
You got the discernment to be able to do that.
100%. Man, there have been situations, I'm going to really quick side tangent. I can think of multiple conversations where we've called somebody, they're the only owner, and they're like, I have the money. I had no idea this thing was going to tax sale. And we're like, man, our cold call just saved some lady from losing her house. I sleep real well at night knowing that, right? But we were chatting with a gal, a granddaughter, and they get so scared when they get the tax lawsuit, when they get served with the notice, right? And so I remember chatting with her, and she was like, we'll do anything to get our name out of the lawsuit. And I was like, okay. Well,
anything?
And I'm happily married. Didn't go down those rabbit holes here, Logan. But,
I wasn't thinking that. Okay. I was thinking like $500 for a house.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. That's hilarious, man. So we did talk numbers. She was like, yeah, I'll sign whatever. $500 sounds sick, cool. And it got to the point where I let them know, hey, I pointed out, you don't hold personal liability here, right? Because we got to the point where I was like, I'm not doing this deal. I actually just gave the owner occupant free information, said, here's what you can do to keep your house as long as you live. You'll be all right, right? Your kids won't inherit much from it, but you'll be okay.
Yep. You got a house to stay in.
You got a house to stay in for at least the rest of your life, right? From there, though, these co-owners pursued me. Like, they followed up with me. Her sister followed up with me. Her mom follows up with me.
Wow.
Because they're so scared about this lawsuit. And I'm like, y'all, let me point this out to you.
Technically, so the real world and the tax code are different. In the tax code, it says they do have personal liability. However, in Texas, though, jurisdictions never pursue the personal liability and they only go after collateral. So in the real world, they don't have personal liability. The tax code says they do.
Interesting.
So if a lawyer would be reading that, like if they would have called a lawyer and the lawyer didn't know much about tax foreclosures and they read it, the lawyer would have said, you do have personal liability. The good news is you've got the pragmatic on the ground experience where you say, they're just going to foreclose. They'll never take a deficiency judgment against you. They'll never come after you. It's collateral based.
Right. Yeah, right. Well, that's good for me to know. And also, I preface everything when I'm telling these people, I'm not an attorney and this is not legal advice, right? And it's funny because I've got, I don't know how many recorded calls where the seller will say, I understand you're not an attorney and you can't give me legal advice, but can you answer me this? You know? But that was an interesting situation just to see, like, when people are listening in and they're wondering, man, are there still motivated sellers out there? Try having people who want to sell a share pursue you, and her sister pursues you, and her mom pursues you. And man, you could clip this up and make it sound real bad.
How radically different is that when people are calling, when you're hearing people in the land flipping, you're hearing people in the wholesaling and the house renovation space saying the deals are skinny, the margins are going away, it's so competitive. And you're like, I don't know, they called me 6 times this week and I can't get them off the phone. How
100%.
different is that?
100%. It's a different world, man. I mean, the reality is with land investing and it's, you know, it's a business, right? Like they're all businesses. But I did land flipping, wholesaling, subdividing. I did it all for about 4 years, and we still do some land deals. Don't get me wrong. And I sales train and coach a lot of land investors. And the conversation there when we're working with those sellers is they're always like, Ajay, they're not motivated. And I'm like, you're right. They're not motivated.
All right.
But on the flip side, you know, I always tell them, well, you got to imagine you got this backpack filled with cash and you got to figure out what they'd go spend it on. So it's a different type of conversation, right? Whereas
that's your salesmanship kicking in. Say, they may not be motivated, but let's see if there's something here.
100%.
You've got a key to a door that most people don't have, which is probably why you have a better probability of selling to unmotivated or dealing with unmotivated sellers than the average person.
100%. 100%. Because they just don't see it, right? They don't see
it, but even these sellers, they know it exists. We had a conversation a little bit earlier. They know it exists, but your job as a skilled salesperson is to help them identify it, get it out, have that conversation, and help them identify a need that they knew they had, but it wasn't quite out and easy for them to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And what's interesting is, again, yeah, you do have people that'll sign like that with you on the distress side. But you also get people that say, I'll just let it go, right? Yeah. And you're like, oh, just let me buy 25% of your property, right? Let me give you $500 for 30 minutes of your time. Come on, right? Where else are you making $1,000 an hour? Obviously, you and I can go make $1,000 an hour as business owners, but like Joe Schmo off the street ain't making $1,000 an hour. And if they were, they'd probably pay off the taxes or deal with the house themselves.
Bingo.
So it's interesting, man. I want to get into some really interesting sales stuff and what we've done in situations like that too. But let's keep rolling because I know we got some good meat we got to hit.
You pay your salespeople a base salary instead of commission only.
Yep.
And some people say that kills drive. Why do you think it makes salespeople better at what they do?
100%. So, man, there's 3 different pieces I look at when I'm thinking about salespeople. Right. The first one is just a sheer recruiting perspective. And I can tell you, you're always going to have a wider net when you offer a salary versus when you don't. Okay. Now you might say, well, I don't want the person that needs a salary. And I'm going to say, I know I'm going to be able to hire faster if I offer one. So I've got speed on my hiring funnel, right? And I've only got so much time, Logan. You've only got so much time. So sweet, man, let's compress timelines there. Next, we've got once they're actually doing the job. And the reality of this business and pretty much any real estate business is if you and I pick up the phone, very rarely are we going to see $1 come back into the bank account once we've spoken to a lead before 90 days. I've had a couple of deals pop sooner, which is pretty sick. As soon as I think 58 or something was the fastest, but that's a fast side, right? I always tell people
you're trying to compress that conversion cycle, and getting the salesperson in that seat is the first step.
Exactly. And so, but knowing that if I were to give somebody commission only, now you can offer a temporary base or draw for the first couple months while they're ramping up. A lot of people don't. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see people busting their butts And now they're losing motivation because they've not had a dollar come in 45 days. And now their husbands and wives are whispering in their ears, why are you working so hard? We don't even have any money coming in over here, right? And so the reality is you got to do two things, right? One is provide a level of consistency because when you offer a salary to people, they feel like they owe you, right? And that's just a human dynamic.
Well, technically, like
they do.
There's an exchange there.
There is, right? It's called an employment agreement for a reason. Hey, I'm going to give you money. You're going to do some stuff in the business for me, right? And hopefully we both like it, right? And if we don't, we'll talk about it.
If it's balanced, then great for us both. Whatever that is.
Exactly. And the reality is, man, there's a learning curve to this stuff, and it's like hard work, right? But this is where I still offer what I think is a pretty generous commission. So we're giving out 8% commissions on deals on top of a base of 30 grand a year right now.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I'm thinking about raising them here soon because I want my reps to make. The reality is, any good salesperson can go out. And if they're like average on an okay opportunity, they should be able to go make $60,000 to $80,000 a year. All right.
But in this business, this is a more profitable business.
It is.
So there's more opportunity. In our office, we're between 100 and 300 grand a year for our salespeople.
There we go, man. And so,
but I have to say, we're probably the most experienced in this business and the most stabilized. But we worked our way there. I would say up until this last couple of years, people might top out at 150 because we weren't quite as developed in all this. And the same things you're realizing. The better I pay somebody, the happier they're going to be, the stickier they are, and the more I can depend on this thing functioning without all of my time. So I'm happy to take, of all these profits I'm getting, let me take some and distribute it back to the people that are helping make this work.
Totally, man. Totally. And I think people are so stingy. It's interesting because people are stingy about future money, sometimes more than present money. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's like, yeah, man, I'll sign up for a coaching program, but no, I don't want to pay somebody a salary. God forbid. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? You're investing in your people so you can take care of them. You know what I mean? And then the moment they're not getting paid for 60 days, now they're like, hey, I had to get a waitress job on the weekend, make extra money. I'm like, dude, I feel like crap if my staff needs to go get a second job. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, but you're a failure as a business owner if your team feels like they need to go get a second job.
The answer is you need to make your business better
100%.
So that you can pay people what they would like.
100%, man. 100%.
Within reason.
Right. And like, I think, you just noted your salespeople are making between 100 and 300 a year, man. A players want to make six figures, and everybody says they want an A player on their team, but nobody wants to pay them as if what A players are going to want to make. Because the reality is, they've got opportunity cost as good salespeople.
That's right.
Right? So, like, we don't look at it through that lens, though. We're like, I'm giving you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
You know an easy way? So, like, a lot of us are in small to mid-sized businesses. If you want to find the right answer, go to the big company. How do they do it? Johnson & Johnson. The reason when we were running a commercial wholesale operation, we had to offer a base pay.
Wow.
And it was pretty good. Yeah. Because we were losing. People would come interview literally with us and with Johnson & Johnson, and they go to Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson had like a $60,000 base pay plus commission.
Wow.
And I remember asking these people, why didn't you come to work for us? They would tell me, well, I took this job over here. I'm like, fuck, how much do you think you're going to make? And they're like, 200 to 300 grand a year. And I said, but I think you're going to make that with us. And they're like, right, but 60 is guaranteed. And I'm like, ooh, so we didn't offer 60 as a base. We ain't Johnson & Johnson. But at that time, we were doing between 24 and 36,000 as a base for those people.
Exactly what I see.
And that was enough to get people to come across the line. And I would still lose someone to Johnson.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of other people that I wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, man. So we've got retention, right? So your hiring funnel, you're literally talking about it right here, right? Makes a difference. And then the retention piece that people are going to stick around. Because the reality is, you and I both know sometimes we get a dry month. That's just business, right? And so if your salespeople have a dry month, man, they got bills they got to pay too. Right. And so, yeah, I take on more risk as the business owner. Welcome to being a business owner in America.
If that is your problem, you need to figure out how to make your business better.
100%.
That's the answer.
Store more cash. Yeah, we could go on and on this. The last thing I'll say is like, man, I want my people to get rich with me, right? Like, let's let everybody eat. Everybody comes to the table to feast. I think there are biblical principles about paying your people well and taking good care of them. And yeah, man.
You know, to that effect, something that we've done a lot is we'll ease into something, we'll start a role, we'll bring people in, and we'll figure out what do we commit to that role to get it rolling. But usually within the first year of like a big commitment from somebody, at that point, we start to look at it and say, okay, this was what we offered as a minimum to get this thing rolling. But then we look at it and say, what does this role contribute to the entire organization? Is this pay category wrong? Does it need to be like significantly changed?
Right.
Or does it just need to include bonuses? Like, how do we do that? But we usually let some runway happen to start to size things up. and we err on the low end usually. But as things develop, we try to get it to something that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a good living wage, like people can't come there.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
You made like 300 grand on one of your first deals in real estate. How in the world did you get a seller to trust a 23-year-old dude who hadn't done many real estate deals?
Man, that is a great question. And I think I'll first answer it with a good old saying that I think is, I hate sometimes but love others, and it's fake it till you make it, baby. You know? I think when you exude confidence in the world, people can feel it, right? So if I tell you, Logan, I'm going to go do this thing, and I believe it with conviction, you're more likely to believe me. But if I'm like, yeah, man, we might be able to get this done, and I think I can raise the money, you're going to be like, dude, I don't know that. Yeah, right? Your eyes just got big. So the first piece there is fake it till you make it. I got to tell you a funny story on this, man. So I'm 23 years old. I was pretty much in the process of quitting my corporate job at this point.
Dang,
I'd sent out
you'd only been in corporate America for not long, man.
A year. I hated it, man. It was
college, corporate America for a year, and then you're like, I'm out.
I'm out because I'd built up my land business and started making money, and I was making way more money in it part-time than I was full-time.
That's when it's time to jump ship.
Exactly. So I think I did things right. And everybody's got their own, set of risk. I was unmarried at that point. Still no kids. I have no kids now, but like the point being just no risk.
That's the time to take the leap.
Yeah, man, my rent was $1,000 a month. I was living in a bachelor pad. Like, come on, your risk is so low. I needed to make 40 grand a year to break even on my expenses. My car was paid off.
Do it.
So it was an easy time to jump. And I always tell people when they're thinking about quitting jobs, I'm like, I just need you to remember your life will only get more risky, not less over time. Right? Especially when they're in phases of life like me. That's like I'm in my 20s, man. And so for us, it's everybody in my group, 5 years younger, 5 years older, they're all in the process of getting married and having their first set of kids and buying houses and buying cars. And I'm like, hey, your risk goes up when all those things come out. I don't know what you think is going to happen in the next 5 years, but it's not going to be easier for you to leave a job. Right? And so I had that foresight as a 23-year-old where I said, let's jump. So I'm talking to the seller, and it was funny, man. I probably had, I think it was 20 grand in my bank account, and we negotiated this deal, but I knew this property was worth at least 300K. And so we negotiated him out to, he told me he wanted about $1,000 an acre. It was 113 acres. So I said, okay, like 110. He said, that'll do it. I said, okay. So we get off the phone, and now I need to go find $110,000, right?
But he didn't know that.
He had no idea, but that's okay, because I knew.
He didn't even know.
I had followed this guy who did funds. His name is Bridger Pennington, if you ever come across him. I've actually chatted with the guy a few times. Really great guy. But he teaches people, like, the example he always paints is like if you had a Lamborghini brand new, right? Somebody was going through bankruptcy and said, hey, Logan, I need 40 grand for this, and I'll give it to you tomorrow. And you had not a penny in your bank account. You think you could make some calls and go find 40 grand?
Figure it out.
For sure. And so once I had that image in my head of like, if you have the deal, money needs deals. Money's always looking for deals, right? And so I was like, cool, man, I just need to open up my eyes to figure out who's looking for deals, who's got money. It's total cool thing, man. So I had called up my best friend growing up. His parents had just downsized. They went from, their childhood home down to, all the kids are empty nesters. They're empty nesters at this point. They had downsized. We're out at lunch, and they mentioned to me, by the way, we've got like 130 grand sitting in an account we're not doing anything with. Could you do anything with it with this new land business you're doing? And I'm like, maybe. And it's funny, man, in my young age, I didn't understand debt versus equity. All I knew is it didn't feel fair to not give equity if I was raising 100% of the capital, which doesn't make any sense now, right? But at the time, I like.
So how'd you structure it?
So yeah, I'll
give them some juice.
I ended up not giving them juice. Here's what I did instead. Is I said, okay, I need to go figure out some other ways to make money. I took out a personal loan for $40,000, and I said, hey, I'm putting in 60 grand of my money, or 55, or whatever half was. I need the other half from y'all. I'll give you guys 20% cash on cash, regardless of how fast it sells, right? And they were like, okay, cool. They underwrote the deal on the best of their ability.
You know why I like that better? Technically, it's savvier for you to use all of their money and none of yours.
Right.
But I like that you put money in it because you will treat that deal like your money is in it. How different, you're an accountable guy, so you probably do the right thing anyway, but how much differently do you treat it when you owe somebody else $40,000 to a bank or whatever? You're so worried about that, you're going to take care of their money because you're taking care of yours.
Yep.
So that's why I love that you did that. And even our deals, we have the ability to do none of our own money a lot of times.
Yep.
But if we raise money for a big one, we got a land deal, we put millions of dollars into on our own. And man, we fucking pay attention.
I was going to say, you probably worked that thing to the bone, right? Your eyes are on it. And so it was, we ended up, market was hot. And so I need everybody to know too, I didn't know a single other real estate investor in person. I started my business in the midst of COVID. I'm out of college. I didn't know anybody that did this. I took one course online, basically.
Wow.
It was Seth Williams' RE Tipster course is how
Oh,
I
yeah.
got in. I found him on YouTube, bought his course, went through like the third module and was like, direct mail, cool. Sent out a campaign, figured it out.
Boom.
That's all I did, right?
One of my favorite sayings is perfect right now. No one knows what they're doing. Some of us do it anyway.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So I knew enough to know if I get a tax delinquent list, send out some mail. Some people will call me. I'll make them an offer. I'll try to buy some land. I did it. Found a realtor there that was a 6th generation native to the town. Sold that property for $450K altogether.
Boom.
So I ended up netting. It was ended up somewhere between $290 and $300 after realtor fees, title fees, debt, like all that kind of stuff.
That's very convincing to leave your corporate America job.
Yeah, man. When you're making 5 times what you made in your W-2, it's like I think we can make this work.
And you'd never look back. Wow. You say sales is your superpower. I frankly think that too. But what's the part no one tells you about mastering sales that makes or breaks your success?
Man, I think the best thing for me to have learned sales, Alex Hormozy is so good about this because people ask him, like, where did you learn sales? What training did you go through? And he's like, guys, I closed 4,000 sales before I ever even knew sales training was a thing. Right? And so that's the reality, is just being the practitioner, doing it, jumping in the seat, making a phone call. Like, that was the fastest way to learn, because how I view sales is in the way that if I have something I need to give someone, and I know when I give someone that thing, their life will be better because of it, I am very confident I can make that sale. I just need to help them realize that. That's the difference, right? I'm not pushing people to anything. I'm just helping them realize this is a good thing. One of my favorite examples is the guys on Instagram that stand in the corner of New York City with gold coins or bowls.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll literally try to give them out, and people are like, don't touch me, right? Get away from me, because they don't know. But it's like, man, people don't receive value if they're not open to it in their own brains. Imagine trying to give away 2,000 little pieces of gold, Logan, $2,000 pieces of gold, and people don't want to take it from you. That's what we do a lot of times when we sell coaching, when we sell, when we're selling people, hey, let me buy out your interest in a property. They just don't realize why this is a good thing for them. So my job is to get them to realize that, man. The last thing I'll say, I did a webinar last week where I had 90 people show up. It was awesome, but I just called my community's leads for them because people complain there are no deals out there. I said, okay, let's see. So I call people's leads.
Let's prove it.
Yeah. I spent 20 minutes with a lady just to get her to admit she should sell her property. Okay.
That's step one.
Man. And so here's what's interesting is people are like, well, they're not motivated. And I'm like, well, dude, you got to get them to realize a couple of things. One piece of qualification is to get somebody to admit, yes, I would sell. I don't care what lead generation source they came through. This is a human you're talking to who woke up on a day that goes through their own experiences. For me to buy something off of somebody, they have to have some level of interest to sell. They've expressed a level of interest. Now I need to get that human to admit I should sell. She didn't know if she wanted to. I knew it was the best thing for her. I spent 20 minutes on the phone to get her to admit to sell. Then the next 30 on why working with us was the best way out. Right?
Wow.
And so, man, the biggest thing is people just don't have the patience to make those calls, to go through all the bull crap. How many FUs, don't call me, curse you, I'm going to kill you. It's like, and I don't know if that'll go up on Meta or not with that verbiage, but man, people say everything under the sun, and you just can't take it personally. Like, I pray for those people, man. It's like, I don't know what's going on in your life that you hate yourself so much you got to curse out a stranger on the phone.
Dude.
But man, your life sucks, dude, if that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. When I was in early days, I've never had sales training. Admittedly, I'm not the best sales guy out there at all. But I just remember calling someone thinking, they don't need this. This is a burden. I got to figure out how to help them get across the line. And I just remember having these calls, listening to people. And I'm thinking in my mind, this person sounds hurt. This person sounds like they had a bad run of luck. They sound angry. Like, gosh, this is terrible. And I remember my first step was just to humanize this process and let them know I'm not a bad guy. I want to try to talk you through this. Can you open up to me a little bit?
Right.
And I remember kind of thinking about how Grant Cardone would I wake up in the morning and say, who's got my money?
Yeah.
I remember thinking, you've got my property. I need to get it. What do I have to do to get us there? And so it was like a mental chess game. You said that you didn't have a lot of training in sales originally. It was a lot of the reps, and then you probably did. And then I went through a bunch of
training. Yeah,
but you're clearly a bright guy, and I think there's a minimum IQ to do a lot of things.
Right.
So as long as you have a reasonable IQ, and you know how important this is, you just get in there and start feeling through these things. And for me, I had a very disarming sales. I didn't have the technical stuff that you have, I think, but I was very disarming. I was very transparent.
Yeah.
Those kind of things were some of my best attributes to really get people to open up. And if I can get them to open up, I can get them there.
Right. And man,
So-
I think your transparency is one of your biggest assets when you're talking
People
to people.
trust that.
Yes.
When you're talking to someone, you're like, this offer is going to expire at noon tomorrow. If you don't get it,
Yeah.
then this is going to happen. And like all this mean asshole shit, that's no good, you know?
Totally,
But
man.
I remember when I would start talking to people early on, they would tell me, well, I'm going to fix it and I'm going to go make all the money. And I said, man,
Sure.
actually, let's talk about that for a minute. If you do that, you actually get the most money. So I'm going to tell you, this is the plan. If I buy this property, this is what I'm going to do.
Yep.
And if you want to keep it, you can do these things.
Yeah.
And I would explain the whole process, everything it takes, all the
Yep.
investment and the true return. I'm literally telling somebody, if I can get this fixed, I'm going to make like $100,000. And you can make that money if you go fix it all.
Yep.
And being completely transparent and not trying to hide that or lie, people would trust me so much more. And I would have people say, I hope you make a lot of money. Like that's the kind of stuff
Isn't
I
that
would
crazy?
hear, as opposed to people like getting hung up on because people think they're being shady.
Right.
Just be fucking honest. And if they're not going to work with you being honest, they ain't going to work with you, dude.
Totally,
you can't
man.
change that anyway many times.
Right. And so it's the same thing with what we were just talking about with confidence, right? Fake it till you make it from that perspective of transparency where people can feel it, right? Like there's a feeling in authenticity in humans that we can all pick up on. We always think we're smarter than the other person on the phone.
Even somebody
But-
with a somewhat low IQ has this human sense about
100%,
them. They
man.
can sense a bad dude.
If you're hiding something or you're not telling me the whole truth, we pick up on it. And dude, I don't want to pick up your calls anymore, right? So it's been funny the amount of times my team has asked me questions like, hey, they're asking what we're going to do with the property. What should we tell them? I'm like, tell them exactly what we're going to do with the
what
property.
do you think? Why do you
Right?
have to ask me that?
And to another point on that, I was on a call with a lady just last week, 2 weeks ago, I think, and you reminded me I need to circle back with her because she was like, well, I had a buddy from church who was going to look at this for me and tell me what it was going to cost to try to clean it up. And I said, okay, I'm going to tell you what my attorneys told me. All right. You're going to need to put down a retainer of $5,000 to $10,000. You've got 3 siblings on this that own this with you. Okay. You're going to need to go find them. You told me 2 are missing. 1 might be dead. You haven't spoken to them in 30 years. You're going to need to find them, and either you or your attorney are going to need to talk to them, right? From there, you're going to need to figure out a way to work together, whether it's giving them some money now or later. You're probably going to have to hire a private investigator to go find these people. Private investigators we work with are between $80 and $350 an hour, minimum of 4 hours at a time, just depending on the work that they're doing. So, you know, Kathy, as I'm talking to you, I just want you to be mindful that you're going to have to put down probably 15 grand of cash with no promise of payout, which is what we do. And I lose money sometimes, and I make money more times than I lose money. And that's why I'm on the phone with you.
100% true.
Right. And so can I ask, is that something you and your husband are willing to do right now? Do you have $15,000 you're okay losing to pursue this? And she's like, well, no. Right. And so right there, by the end of this 47-minute call, she's like, yeah, it makes no sense to just work with you. What's the best you can give me? I said, I know we said $750 originally. I can give you $1,600. She's like, all right, let's sign it up.
Instead of me paying out $15,000 and not being sure, I'll take a couple grand. Let's roll.
Totally. And it's the certainty, man. So I use all kinds of stuff to instill certainty in people. And as we get into it, man, I'm going to talk through some objections and how I reverse engineer them in conversations. But again, this is my playground, Logan, where I start to have a lot of fun in this stuff.
All right, so we're going to go backwards.
Yep.
You told me from corporate America to moving into the real estate space what that looked like. But
Yep.
let's go back. For 5 minutes, tell me, who's Ajay? Where are you from? Tell me just a little bit of character sketch.
Totally, man. Let's do it. So, golly, where do we start? So I was, my family's from Nepal. So hence the lovely tone on my skin right now is my family just north of India, south
The
of China.
perpetual tan.
Yep, there you go. Exactly. My family's from Nepal. I'm born again, faithful to Christ, very happy to be a follower of his. I was born in Chicago, grew up in southern Indiana. So I identified with a lot of rural America despite being born in the city, which is really funny.
Was that tough? Because my family is from Iowa, farmers,
Okay.
from Lynn County out there. You look a little different than my Iowa farming family. Was
Totally.
that tough a little bit?
So we were in a college town, so there was some diversity from
Okay.
the students. But I always said, like, it was never too bad unless I was, like, at Walmart too late, at Cracker Barrel in the morning, at Texas Roadhouse on graduation weekend. And then, like, man, I walked in and you could tell I was the only guy that wasn't a white guy there. And, I mean, we had some, experiences that weren't perfect. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
We very stereotypically ran a gas station when we lived in Indiana. And we had situations where people, like, when they would pay us with cash, wouldn't want to touch our hands and stuff like that, you know? So there was stuff like that, don't get me wrong, but, like, man, I don't take it personally. Again, people are raised with a certain set of beliefs, and it has nothing to do with me. Same as the angry people on the phones.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about them, right? And the moment I learned that, like, I'm good, man. There are too many good people on this earth for me to spend time thinking about the bad ones.
It's the right answer.
You know
when
what I
moved
mean?
to San Antonio, it was the first city I lived in where I was a minority.
Okay.
And it was strange for a while. I go to places and I'm one of the lightest guys in the room usually.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I probably experienced it to the same extent you did, but yeah, I acknowledge some amount.
Yeah.
Over time, I just get used to it. But
Yeah, man, totally. So grew up in Southern Indiana, went to college in Indiana. Great time, good people. And then pretty much started working in corporate after that, man. I got a couple of things I do for fun and really just read books and work out and hang out with my wife. And I am a recreational beatboxer too. Most people don't know that about me.
That's not what I would have expected. That's funny. That's not what I would expect.
It's a good little party trick if you're trying to entertain kids or people are having drinks. You know, it's a fun little one to whip out. I learned it for a talent show. We were raising money for kids at Children's Hospital, and it was just a fun trick, kind of like juggling. You know.
How old are you right now?
26.
Okay. 10 years ago, you're 16.
Yep.
Tell me, what was your perspective on life? Where did you think you were going? What was your mind like at 26?
Yeah, so it's funny. I always knew I was going to be wealthy. I didn't know how, and I didn't know what wealthy meant. So I remember I would look up different sales jobs. That's where my brain went because I understood variable. At 16, I understood variable compensation because my family ran the gas station. And so, man, as a 10-year-old, I'm in there upselling customers.
Wow.
When they're buying a Monster, and I say, hey, they're 2 for $4.
This is in your blood.
It's how I was raised. So my brain was in it. My mom is from a village that's so remote. Her nickname was Bucky Gardnani, which translates to girl from the stone house. So like she tells me stories. They didn't have balls growing up. They would ball up the neighborhood kids' socks to get a ball to play with, right? So she's from somewhere so remote where I'm so grateful for who she is today. But when it came to running the gas station, man, a piece about me I didn't mention is my dad left our family when I was 9 years old.
Oh.
And so, man, there's a whole thing there. But my brother and I both really stepped up to help out around. And so we grew up quick. Right. And my older brother had to grow up quicker than I did. And he protected me from a bunch of stuff. Great guy.
But still at 16 years old, that's a time where 13 to 16, like you're kind of becoming a man.
Totally, man.
And you don't know how to be a man. You have these instincts and these hormones. But if you don't have dad to look at and learn from, you have to figure this stuff out on your own. So I think becoming a man without a good father or a good role model male is a little tougher.
So that's where I got really lucky getting plugged into the church, Logan. So my family's not Christian. And I just came into a ministry in high school where I had a bunch of really strong male leaders introduced to me, where I learned good values, morals, principles. Oh my gosh, such a blessing, man. Like I will never be able to thank God enough for introducing me to strong men in my life that just modeled, like, what does it look like to take care of your family? What are good values? What does it mean to be just like a good person? Where does morality even come from, right? And so there's all these questions I was asking as a teenager and didn't have a dad to look up to, and then got plugged in with these great guys that just propelled me on this track, right? But to your question of, at 16, I remember thinking, okay, by the time this is funny thinking back to it, because I remember by the time I'm 25, I'm going to be making 6 figures a year. And, it's funny, I've had 6-figure months, not every month yet, but I've had 6-figure net months in the business. And it's just so funny to look back to, because I was thinking I would get into pharmaceutical sales, or I'd get into, what was the other one that I would see a lot? There was payment processing was a big one that I was in. I actually invested in a payment processing business recently because I love that model. It's super passive on the fulfillment side. But the point just being, I'd look at businesses where I'd make more money the more work that I did. I want to tell you another funny story.
You're really money focused.
Definitely. And I think a big piece of that, man,
even at that young age,
was because we were without. So like when my dad left, he sold our house, maxed out my mom's credit cards, basically left us for dead.
Have you talked to him since then?
Not since I was 14. And to be honest, I don't really want to, man. Like he had a lot of bad habits about him that I just don't think anything positive would come from it. I hope he's good, you know what I mean? But he continued to emotionally abuse my mom, ask her for money, all this kind of stuff for years after they split up. So I just know nothing good will come from it. You know what I mean?
Right. At this point in your life, you don't have to accept anybody in your life that you don't want to accept.
Exactly.
And part of that filter is, if I don't think I do this myself, if I don't think someone's going to add to my life, I don't even care if it's family. If they're not going to add to it and help improve it, they're not going to be part of it.
No, sir. Not at all. And if they hurt the people I love, come on, get out of here. Right. And so again, it was a control thing for me where I watched how much it hurt my mom and my brother and our family when we were without. And I was like, man, I'm never going to let anybody make me feel powerless. I'm never going to let anybody make my family feel powerless.
There are a lot of very big, great success stories that did come from some amount of underdog, underprivilege, underappreciation, underdogs.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
Yeah, man.
That spark is right.
It's it'll drive you. It'll drive you, and it's funny as an adult now unpacking all the childhood trauma, so to speak, and figuring out why am I wired this way? How do I use this to my advantage? Like, do I love who I am? Do I want to keep pursuing it this way? You know, and you're given certain drives, and man, like it's turned into this beautiful thing where I get to be a business owner, make more money than I could spend. I mean, I guess I could spend, but like more than my wife and I do in our very normal lifestyle.
More money than you should spend.
More money than you should spend. There you go. I mean, we love how we live and we get to bless other people, man. I love tipping servers extremely well randomly and taking care of people that I love and getting to bless other people with food, right? Like buying meals. Man, I think it's the Asian culture in me, but I just love buying food for people. There's something so special about it. So, yeah, man, it was interesting. At a young age, I knew I was going to get into something with variable compensation. And the last story I want to tell there, because I know we've been on this for a bit, I remember I was 19 years old. I went and interned with Cummins, you know, the big engine power company. Great company to work for if you want to just like work in corporate your whole life. Good culture, good values, good people. I'm 19 years old and I'm a workhorse, man. And most of the interns there are 2021. I'm 19. I'm in there. I'm making a name for myself. At the end of the summer, I remember I'd finished 7 different projects as an intern, and the average intern finishes like 1 to 2. I had 7 teams call. Yeah, man. I had seven different teams call my managing director to be like, hey, can we hire him next year? When's he graduate? And she was like,
dude, demand
he's
is
a sophomore.
There.
Yeah. And so
he's a sophomore
in college. You got to wait a couple years. And they were like, what the hell? You know? And so I watched that and I got back to my friends in college and I was like, man, I worked so much harder than everybody else. And I made the same amount of money, you know? And I remember saying to one of my roommates, like, I want to work somewhere where I'm paid for my output. And he was like, dude, that's not how the world works.
That is how the world works, boy.
Man, and I looked him in the eyes and I said, maybe not your world, but that's how mine works.
That is a fork in the road between you and him.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean he's bad. It's just how he saw the world.
Totally.
But if you look at probably his position today relative to where yours is, I bet he still believes what he does and you still believe what you do.
Yeah. And, you know, God bless him. You know what I mean? But it's a belief system, right? And once you start changing your beliefs, man, like I remember I was talking to a guy that was interested in working with y'all, and he's you know, successful, hungry kid. I say kid, he's, you know, 5 years younger than me, but he's
You're getting old.
Yeah, right. He's running a power washing business, making 8-10 grand a month. And I'm like, hey man, I want to speak this into you because I wish people told me this when I was making 10 grand a month. If you're pursuing this opportunity, even if it's just you and maybe an admin, there's no reason you can't make 50 to 100 grand a month. He was like, that would be insane.
Wow.
But that's a belief shift. Right? Where like you have to believe this is an opportunity or else you might self-manifest 10 grand a month somehow. You might do the crappiest deals in the world for the hardest work. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm here to say those numbers are possible. I've watched them happen over and over. I've lived them and then I've smashed them. So I know for a fact that's true. All right. I want to spend some time talking to you about salesmanship and the way it is in the distressed property world.
Yeah.
Because salesmanship is salesmanship. It travels across all industries.
Totally.
But it presents a little different in each one. How is doing sales in this kind of business different than the other real estate business you've been in?
Yeah, man. Such a good question. So I think I'm going to answer this. I'm going to first tell a story and then I'll answer your question more directly. I remember when I was beginning to work with y'all, you had sent me your like 25-minute video sales letter, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember this line vividly because at one point you say, we're not salespeople, we're technicians. And I was like, well, what if I'm both? What'll that do?
Then you'll be better on average.
Right. And so when you said that, it unlocked something in me where I'm like, all these guys are crushing it as technicians. And I know I'm a salesperson. And I know you're still talking to working with humans. So as long as there's a human-to-human interaction, sales exists, right?
More than one of our guys have the personality of a fucking board. But you know what? They do great. I can see why your pipeline built good and quick.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So I got really excited about that and just jumped in head first, right? And so when it came to the difference in the conversations, I want to first start with how the marketing looked because the majority of it's just cold calling. Right. And people hear cold calling and they're like, okay, so go hire like a $4 an hour Filipino VA. And I'm like, no. Right. Like, no, bring in an American in-house or you yourself hit the phones. And I'll tell you, like when when I was training my team, I had 2 full-time salaried US-based salespeople that were working with us on the land side. And to train them up, because I didn't have scripts and I didn't have templates and I didn't know what the pipeline was going to look like, I got up my webcam and I said, y'all are just going to watch me make dials for 3 hours a day for a couple of days.
Oh, okay. That's very OJT.
Yeah, man. I was like, we're just going to figure it out. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know by talking to my customers in any business, I learn the process
You're
better.
going to figure this out.
Right. And so I'm on the phones and I'm like, what are the pain points?
God,
what are the objections?
That's a very adept salesperson. I know how to sell, but I don't know this business. Let me work the phones and understand this, and I can build it out for them.
100%, man. And I think one of my favorite unlocks. So let me answer your question too. And I want to expand on a sales principle that just changed the game for me in these conversations. So, when it came to really diving into like, what's the difference in the prospect? A lot of times they don't know that they are an owner in a property.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
So that was a very interesting difference because we're used to people knowing they own a piece of land, right? Or a house. And
they have
a
all
lot
these
of times,
ideas about the land, what they want to do with it, where it's from. They have all these thoughts and
Right.
beliefs. This is all that. Plus, by the way, this is now yours. Now all these thoughts and beliefs and ideas rush in quickly.
Yes, right? And so on top of that, they also didn't register the situation as a problem necessarily. Either they didn't care about it or, man, generally speaking. So one of my favorite principles as a salesperson and somebody that trains salespeople is, as humans, it is easier to do nothing than it is to do something. Some more than others, man. You and I, we can't really do nothing. I can't sit around, but generally speaking, right? There's a scientific principle that it is easier to do nothing than it is to do something. The job of salespeople is to help the average person who has a proclivity to do nothing into action, right? And that's why salespeople are always going to be needed in the world, because it is easier to do nothing than it is to do something. So to help people make decisions, that's what we do as salespeople. We help people make decisions, whether it's working with me or whether it's, hey, you're old and you had a husband who was a vet and please go do this tax deferral program so you don't lose your house, ma'am. I'm happy to have that conversation because there's plenty of this stuff out there and plenty of money to be had, right? Yep. So those were 2 big things that I realized were different in the average conversation and prospect. Now, I want to take a quick side tangent, man. I did some training with, you know who Andy Elliott is? Mm-hmm. So I did some training with his team, learned a bunch of different stuff about the coaching world and high ticket and marketing. But my favorite principle I learned from them was about how to do one-to-many sales. And I know we exchanged some text messages about this, but it's interesting because one-to-many sales and one-to-one sales are basically the same thing, just through different formats. All right. And when I say one-to-many, guys, think like through a webinar or, a wide array of marketing and some level. Yeah, exactly. On a stage. Exactly. It's still a human psychological problem, though. So if I can take that,
it's just far more efficient.
It is. And if I can take something that's wildly efficient one-to-many and instill it in a one-to-one process, we're going to be even more efficient at that. And now I can scale that up. Right. And so here's what it looks like. When you're working with a prospect, okay, there's 2 variables that matter in order to make a decision. Number 1, are they problem aware? Number 2, are they solution aware? Okay. And so then my coach at Andy Elliott's team then went on to explain the difference between a cold prospect, a warm prospect, and a hot prospect are those 2 variables in different manners. Okay. So let me explain. A cold prospect is neither problem aware nor solution aware. A warm prospect is problem aware, but not solution aware. A hot prospect is both, right? Simple, very simple. Man, I find the best frameworks in the world are the most simple. So let's talk about what this looks like in a lead. A cold lead would be somebody that doesn't know they own a property, doesn't really give a rat's, and doesn't know who you are.
That happens a lot in this business.
More often than it doesn't, right? So we got cold leads. We got warm leads that are like, shoot, I just got the letter. I just got the service. I don't know what to do. They're not solution aware either in their own life or with your company.
Yeah, those people are problem, but not solution.
And then you've got hot leads that are like, those are the leads that follow up with you after you've had a conversation a lot of times. But the people that, remember I said I had a seller lead that chased me. That's a hot lead. Now, it wasn't a situation that I was going to dive into. There's a qualification of a prospect, and then there's a qualification of like a property /situation /legal that you got to do. So we're just talking from like a persona, a prospect perspective here, right? Yeah. Hot lead is both problem aware. They don't want to deal with whatever's going on, and they're solution aware. They know you can fix the problem, right? So what I did is I reverse engineered my sales script to take any prospect from cold to hot. Every
Oh,
conversation
wow.
is a journey.
No matter where they are in that spectrum, you're going to walk them through this process to make sure that when you're done with this correspondence, they're hot.
Exactly. And so here's how we do that. We found the prospects that were warm, were problem aware, and we just went ahead and focused on owners that were in a tax lawsuit at some level, right?
Okay.
And we didn't do it in like a 30-day foreclosure window necessarily as much as just like a active tax
lawsuit's already
lawsuit.
been filed.
Exactly. So what we would do is at the beginning of our script, I'd say, hey, Logan, it's Ajay. Did I catch you at a bad time? People have mixed reviews on that opener, right? There's an opener and a call to just keep people on the phone. I like it. It's simple. It's easy. It keeps it. People don't hang up on me, right? And that's all I'm trying to avoid in that first 10 seconds is a hang up, man. After that, immediately, I want to make them problem aware. Logan, so I'm calling. And I stole a lot of what I've heard you say on stuff before. The reason I'm reaching out is, first off, I noticed your name was listed in a tax lawsuit in Dallas County. You know anything about that? And they're like, ooh, right? And either they are or they're not. So I can figure out, are they problem aware or not, right? And if they're like, no, I don't know anything about that. Now I'm going to use some stuff I've learned from our good friend Kyle Westbrook, where I'm going to say, well, Logan, I see you're the son of, Maybelline. I don't know your mother's name, sorry. But I see you're the son of Maybelline. And it seems like Maybelline owned a property on 1234 Hudson Ave. Are you familiar with that property? Yeah, that was my mom's house. Exactly. So the reason I'm reaching out is basically I'm just a local real estate guy. What I do is I look up properties that are currently in a tax lawsuit, and then I find out, who's listed on the lawsuit. Your name was listed because oftentimes it's just a family member of the original owner, like your mom Maybelline here. And so what we do is we give you a call, and if you're interested in working with us, what we can do is get your name out of the lawsuit, give you a little bit of money for your time, and that way you're not getting any more notices from the courts. Is that something you'd be interested in?
That's very disarming. Not, I want to buy your property. I'm going to make you an offer. It's cash going to close quick. It's not that standard jargon. It's
right.
You're speaking to the things that are happening in their head and their heart right
exactly.
now without being abrasive or a, crummy used car salesperson.
100%, man. I want to unpack what I said there just a little bit too, right? So problem aware, do they know what's going on? That's my first question.
You figured that out quick.
Exactly. And now I know, are you cold or warm? And then I very quickly introduce a potential solution. Hey, I'll buy out your interest in the property, your ownership stake. I'll get your name removed from the lawsuit. I'll give you a little bit of money from your time.
Because that's something they need to hear. And you saying you're going to buy inherently means that this lawsuit thing is going to be solved. But by you specifically saying that, it goes right to a key problem they've got.
Yep. And some people don't like it. I'm more of a direct salesperson where I'm just like, let's get in. Some people prefer more of like an indirect route, which is where you hear the scripts of like, hey, I'm doing a genealogy and I was hoping you could help me with it, which we might do with co-owners sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. After we've already got an entry in a property, like our first deed. But
you know what? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
A lot of people say, when I talk to these people, they all hang up on me. What percentage of people are just canning you right off the bat, and what percentage are actually engaging in this line of conversation?
Man, I'll be honest, we probably only get 15, 20% hang up on us.
Then that means they have a bad intro and they need to work on their early conversation.
100%.
A lot of people also say, these people are mad and they got a bad time and they don't want to talk to anybody. Do you believe that's true, or do you think they also need to work on their intro?
I think they also need to work on their intro. Now, here's another thing about this business and any real estate business, and I tell this to people I train all the time. It's so based on timing, man. I did, and let me explain. I did a live stream on my Instagram about a year ago where I was just cold calling landowners just for, man, I ended up I was racing Alan Quintero. You know Alan.
Yeah.
I love that dude.
Yeah.
We're good buddies, man. Good buddies. Love that guy to death. And Alan and I were doing like a closer Olympics kind of a thing.
Oh,
we were stealing from like the Steve Trangs and the Robert Wensleys of the world. And so we were both streaming on our Instagrams, racing to see who would get a deal first. So, man, we're making dials. I cold called a lady. She picks up and says, "What the hell do you want?" Can you imagine when a call starts like that? You think it's going to be a good one?
No.
Do you know what I said? I said, "I'm so sorry, Helene. Did I catch you in a bad mood?"
You identified it and put it right in front of her. Now she feels like a shithead.
Now she does. And she's like, "I'm sorry. It's just raining. I'm bringing in groceries. What can I do for you?" We had a great conversation,
She went
man.
from here to there by your approach.
Totally, man. And so people don't realize.
You didn't say, did I catch you at a bad time? Did I catch you in a bad mood?
Yeah, because now it's an identity thing, right? Where it's just like, are you feeling a certain way?
Are you feeling a certain way, or are you a bad person?
Exactly.
Now they've got to say, I'm feeling a certain way. Now I've got the responsibility to stop acting like that to this guy who's not a bad dude.
Exactly, man. They just called her up, right? And I did double dial her, right?
But you did call her out in a very kind and respectful way.
Totally, man. And so I bring that up to say this business is so based on timing, because imagine I called her in the middle of raining groceries versus right after she'd walked out of the spa. You think she'd answer my phone a little different?
Yeah.
Right? And so when people say, everybody's angry, it's like, dude, just try a different time. Like that lead's not a bad lead. As long as it's a human that would sell the property, it's not a bad lead.
It's a decent property. You know they got the same problems that you're looking for. It's in a market that you're interested in, and a human owns it that you have a contact information to. You should try.
Yep, exactly. And so I would just call them back 3 days later or whatever, right? And that's another piece in my script if people were listening. At the end there when I ask, is that something you'd be interested in? Is that something that's worth chatting about for 5 minutes? Those are my 2 questions that come back to qualification. Earlier I was telling you on a webinar, I just talked to a lady for 20 minutes to get her to admit she would sell, right? That's that qualifying piece. We're talking to cold prospects. They need to admit to us, yes, I would sell my interest.
What happens if you start through this talk track, so to speak, and they just throw a wrench in the spokes and like, well, I'd love to sell it, but Johnny's my brother. He's a bad guy. He'll never sell. He said he'd never sell to make me mad.
Right.
What do you continue back to your talk track, or do you take the off ramp and go manage that?
So great question. I think the first thing I would do is isolate it so it doesn't kill the conversation, right? So if I'm talking to old girl Megan and she hates her brother Johnny, I'm going to say, Megan, I totally understand. First thing I'm going to do is acknowledge what she's talking about. I'm sure that's been a really stressful situation. Second thing I do is disarm. So I've got a little process I go through when it comes to objections. Second thing I'm going to do is disarm, where I say, I understand I'm a Yahoo that just called you out of the blue, and this is probably making you feel emotions and, past conversations here. And then I'm going to educate her, right? What we do is actually working with people that are in the exact same situations as you, where siblings, unfortunately aren't able to come to terms. And then I'm going to ask a question. So knowing that, is it worth it for us to chat for a couple of minutes to see if I could get you some money for your interest?
That brings them off that path and hopefully right back to your talk track.
Totally. And that was just me off the cuff. I'm sure I could write out some better scripting on something like that. But the point is, you always acknowledge the objection, you disarm, you educate/explain. So much of sales is education, man. And then at the very end, you always ask a question to take back control of a conversation. And now you're driving again.
So many people that I've ever talked to say a script doesn't work. People know you're working off a script. It sounds bad. I believe in scripts. I went through some training with Keller Williams as an investor, not a realtor, a long time ago. And when I saw how well they worked and just all the pros, I'm like, wow, this is it. In our business, we've kind of haven't really used scripts. We've built like 5 or 6 things that we need to get through in the conversation, and we just kind of work through them as they happen.
Yeah.
But I think even we would benefit from having a more scripted approach.
Man, it's funny because when we jumped into your stuff, I was expecting a script, not like expecting in the sense that I thought you were, because you were pretty upfront that we don't have one, right?
But you thought it's got to be a more sophisticated approach.
So it's funny because I came in, but as a sales trainer, I know how to write scripts, man.
And you're like, whoa, I can add to this.
Totally.
This is probably something that you could really improve.
Totally. So I just started coming in, and like I said, I jumped on the phones so I could hear all the problems. And now that I've heard them, I do call reviews for my team. So even if I'm not making dials that day, I'm still hearing the calls that are happening. I'm still hearing the objections that are coming. And then we train for them, right? And something I loved learning from, people have mixed reviews on Andy Elliott. I think he's got so much good stuff out there.
Pick the good stuff.
Pick the good stuff. Yeah, you don't need 100% of every person out there. I'm not him. He's not me. That's okay. I learn from him. And that's okay, right?
Agreed.
One of the things he talks about is like, hey, you get the same 6 to 12 friction points in a conversation. Why wouldn't you train for them? Right? That was a light bulb for me where it's like, hey, Logan, you ever heard, I got nothing to do with that property. You ever hear exactly what you laid out for me? Well, my brother's not going to sell, right? You ever hear, I'm trying to think of what, oh, my attorney's handling it, right? Like, so we heard these things.
You're hitting them on the head.
I know. I got a whole document I'm happy to share with you on 7 or 8 objections that we've found come up over and over and over again, right? And so with my team, I'm like, hey, every time you get an objection more than 3 times, you bring it to me because there's a theme there, right? So let's work on it.
Let me prep something for this.
Exactly. Let's train on it.
This is so professionalized in that process. When you look at the entire process of distressed property projects, you do not have 10 years of experience in this whole thing, but you have a whole bunch of experience in this one section.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of hustle that's inherently in who you are. But throughout this process, I think your ability to work with the people is probably what's got your pipeline built so quick.
Totally, man.
And folks would say, well, I don't know how to deal with this legal stuff, and I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to do that.
Me neither.
Right. What's your answer for that? Like, what do you tell them?
Yeah, man. So the advice I've always given people that are interested in getting into distressed property acquisition is just partner with people that do. Because here's the reality. If you, man, I could take any 22-year-old idiot, not that I'd want to, but I could, who can read and pick up the phone. And if you speak English or Spanish, because honestly, a lot of these leads are Spanish, we've come to learn. If you can do those things and read off my script and do it 300 times without an expectation for an outcome, you'll get a verbal for $500 to $1,000 on a deal we can do. And if you do that and bring it to a JV partner, you will do a deal. And that's what I've been telling everybody, man, is, hey, I'm thinking about doing it. Does this work? Is the program worth it? I said, it's only worth it if you're going to do the work. Can you commit to talking to 300 people, offering them all $500 to $1,000 for their ownership, right? If you can do those two things, bring that verbal to a Logan or a Dave or a Chris Beery or whoever, right? We worked with Chris. Chris been on here. I love Chris. That guy was awesome, man.
Let's talk about that. So I don't even know the count, but it's a lot of people who have chosen to do something similar to you. I don't want to build this whole business. I don't want to deal with financing. I don't want to deal with all the lawyers. I don't want to deal with carrying the inventory, having an accounts receivable and a payable, all that kind of junk. I don't want to do that. But I want to build a sale, an acquisition portion of this business.
Yep.
And you and several other people that we work with frequently have built that part, and they say, I'm going to get half the deal, but I don't have to capitalize it. I don't have to deal with as much of the legal.
Yep.
I'm going to find these suckers and bring them in. And your probably dollar per hour might actually be higher than ours because you don't have to deal with some of these other parts.
Yeah.
But I looked at a JV sheet. We've got a JV partner right now we have 62 projects with.
Wow.
And 12 of those, or 10 or 12 of those, have already been sold.
Okay.
So we've got over 50 in inventory with that JV partner.
That's nuts.
It really is. But when I look at the returns, this person is so good with people and so good with researching the right property to call. They have a very high conversion rate, and they're negotiating deals that are in the exact situation that they need to be in to get the best opportunity.
Right.
So the returns, instead of him making a 100% return, let's say he spends 50 grand, he makes 50.
Yep.
These deals are 50-50. If you spend 50, he's getting 100 in margin. So when we cap it, the spend is 50, he still makes 50.
Yep.
But we still make 50. Well, the kicker is we're the ones spending the capital. So we are still doubling our money.
Right.
But he is making a huge return on a very low labor and a very low product and monthly overhead. If his overhead's more than $3 grand, $4 grand, I'll be shocked. But he still makes $50,000 lick on that deal while he's got 50 of them in the pipeline with us right
And that's
now.
what I tell people. If you have no money, you can do this business. Right, man. And we started doing some more back end stuff after we got about 6 or 7 deals under our belt.
You're building some capital, you're building some experience, and that JV partner that you're working with probably loves this because y'all each get a good
We're
return
making
on
money
what you're
together,
doing.
man.
Right. But over time, you can decide, I want to just do the acquisition part, or I'm going to build out the back end of this. And as I've capitalized myself along the way, I can now afford to do it.
Yeah.
And it's self-fund.
I think it brings up a principle here too. It is fun, man. And it brings up, like, if you want somebody's attention, make money with them. Okay. So, like, here's what I mean by that is Chris was somebody who I quickly identified. I respect this guy. I can learn from him. Right. So we brought him business. And you know what? When I call him, he picks up my phone call because we're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars together this year. And so would you look at that? I get this cool new 7-figure net profit business guy who lives 45 minutes from me, who now we like break bread together and get to talk live, and he's a great guy, right? So if you're somebody who's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the help on the back end, number one,
it's there.
It's there, man. It's there. And like you said,
That's an original principle of don't worry about building your buyers list. Go find yourself a deal and then figure out what to do with it.
100%.
Very similar here.
100%. I mean, the reality is, the principles of business are just applied human principles, man.
Fair.
That's all it is, right? And
that's very fair.
And when you get to truth, it's all the same. It's so funny too. So I actually started getting mentored by Jake Frugier, who you brought out to the event.
Yeah,
that's where I met him. And it's been a very fruitful mentorship, man. It's been really funny for me because this guy, you know, he does what, 150, 200 million bucks a year in his portfolio companies.
Like it, yeah.
He's crushing it, man. Really cool guy. I just spent a whole day with him. He was up in Dallas a few weeks back. And it's funny when I bring my problems to him, Logan, because I'll be like, hey, man, I'm thinking about hiring another salesperson, but I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that. And he's like, will you make more money if you hire the salesperson? I'm like, yes. He's like, do you have bandwidth to train them? Yeah. He's like, what are the risks? I'm like, basically none. He's like, why wouldn't you hire a salesperson?
Then what are you waiting on?
Yeah, right? And I'm like, done. Boom. You know? So it's funny because I look at that and I hear people that are like, should I do this opportunity? Should I do cold calling? What if I don't have a script? What if I, like, it's funny the more you go up in business, totally, man, when it's just like, just pick up the phone and just inputs and outputs, right? Another thing about sales and sales training that I think helped me move so quick on this stuff was understanding the inputs and outputs. Okay, so
What does that mean?
So it's a great question, right? You hear people talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. What's that mean? And when I train land investors, I say, hey, first thing I need you to do is get your metrics to me. They're like, okay. So we standardize definitions on metrics. We make sure we're talking about the same thing. And, the metrics I have them report are basically how many people you talk to, how many offers you make, how many verbal acceptances you get, contracts signed, deals done. There's a ratio and all of that. I've looked at hundreds of land businesses. I know how to get people juiced up. But what I've come to find is when people aren't hitting their goals, it's oftentimes just a deficit of the right activities, right? So I always talk about fitness as like the easiest example where like I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I'm a little heavier than I want to be right now, but I understand math and I understand applied principles. And so guess what? I walk 10,000 steps a day, I eat a little bit less calories and I up my protein intake and I lift weights 3 times a week. What do you know, man? I've lost 5 pounds. Like that's crazy, right? So it's the same thing in business where we got into distressed property acquisition and I said, cool, I need to figure out what are the inputs on the sales side, the acquisition side I need to be looking at.
Radically different from cold calling for land or wholesaling, or remarkably different.
Right. When are you asking
the volume?
Yeah, the volume is insanely different, absolutely. But I think there's
same metrics,
much
different volumes,
absolutely. Especially just from like a sheer leads perspective, right? I had somebody ask me the other day, like, how many leads do you need, per sales rep? And it's like, well, it kind of depends how deep you're going on your research, but you could get away with as little as 10 and just go really deep on them for a whole week if you wanted.
And when they hear that, they're like, oh, this sounds easier.
Yeah, it's like, well, I wouldn't quite say that. We're calling brother, sister's cousin's neighbor's husband to figure out,
You're consuming less data, but you're doing a little bit more of this other thing.
Exactly. But in terms of the actual activities that are yielding a deal, so to speak, what I'm focused on is number one, the amount of dials I make, right? And when I say dials, if I'm calling, let's say a property's got 5 owners on it, right? 5 different people have inherited some piece of this. If I triple dial one of these owners, that's 1 dial, right? So on a given day, we'll make somewhere between 20 and 40 dials per sales rep. After we get to dials, next activity that really starts to matter is how many actual owners are you speaking with? Because, man, I can dial all day long, but if I just want to dial the worst phone numbers in my Rolodex, hey, look at that, man, I'm making 300 dials every day, right?
Well, you ain't getting paid, buddy.
Yeah, right? Which is why then it's how many actual owners am I connecting with? How many people that have an ownership stake in the property am I speaking to on the phone? Any capacity, right?
Yeah, that's the connection. It takes these calls to get those, but those connections are what matter.
Exactly. And we see anywhere from like a 1 in 8 to 1 in 12 on the dial to connection typically. After that is where we get to the actual offers, right? And I know you and I were joking about this earlier, but man, if I talk to 300 owners and I only make 1 offer, it's going to be hard for me to get a deal. If I make no offer, it's hard for me to get a deal. But I need to say, hey, Logan, I'd like to give you $500 for your interest, right? Hey, what would you say if I gave you $500 for your interest? I would script it different. We can talk about that offline, right? But point being, did you actually offer somebody money for their interest? Because otherwise, man, I'm sure you've heard this. You get to a point in the conversation where they're like, so what are you trying to do? Why are you calling me about this property?
Get to the point.
Get to the point.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You got to be making
Wayne
the
Gretzky,
shots.
Michael Scott.
Too. Yeah.
I don't know if you watch The Office.
Yeah. You got to be taking those shots, though.
100%,
you do.
man. 100%, right? So we've got dials, we've got owner connections, we've got offers, then we have verbal acceptances, people that tell us yes, right? And that's not go ahead and send me your paperwork. I need to have my attorney review it, blah, blah, blah. That stuff matters, right? And pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. But that's not a yes, right? I need a yes. And then we get to like new deeds, essentially.
So those KPIs, this needs to be clarified for people. Those KPIs get you in a deal.
Yep.
Now, when you're looking for a KPI, how many more calls do I have to make to get that deal complete? I don't know. That data will never be consistent. Too many variables.
Totally.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
What you need is an interest in this property to get the project started. That's what you have to track.
Exactly. And Alex Hormozy always says, like, do so much work, it would be unreasonable for you to be successful. Like if you were like, man, I can't lose weight. And I told you eat 1 steak a day and run a marathon every day. Do you think you'd lose some weight? Probably. I don't know if it'd be fat or muscle, but you'd lose some weight.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's an extreme example to paint the picture of do so much that it would be unreasonable. Like, dude, go make 1,000 offers to owners.
Sometimes people ask me, how many how many hours a day should I call? I was like, I don't know. How hungry are you? Because I did it for 6 to 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for probably 2 fucking years.
That's crazy.
I was very hungry, but I would go to work and research call.
Yep.
Well, within a couple of years, I got to the point where I made $700,000-$800,000 while figuring a model out within the second or so year by myself.
Yeah.
I think I had an assistant at that time.
Hmm.
So how many hours a day do you need to call? I don't know. How bad do you want this?
Yeah.
We can figure out what your metrics need to be, but if you're calling 4, 5, 6 hours a day and you know how to talk to a person, you'll get a deal in a week or two. So get that out of your system, get that done. Then let's talk about what metrics you think you need to hit.
Right. I just get focused on, man, if I can make one metric, you could only do one, offers.
Why I like to have these metrics well aware, and your metrics line up a lot with ours, so
good.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah, me too.
But what that means is this is kind of what it takes for these to work. And I like folks that are somewhat new in this business to understand what these are. These are kind of like milestones or markers. If you're doing this amount of work and you aren't getting deals inked, something is wrong. This is a red flag. Let's go back and look at your process. And this is what we really try to encourage folks to do in our program. Okay, you've been calling for 2 weeks and haven't gotten anybody ready to go. How many calls a day have you made? How many hours are you spending? What data you're calling? All right, something's wrong. Let's look at your data. What's your research look like? Okay, that looks good. Where are you getting your information from? Your phone numbers and all that? Is that a quality source? Okay, that's a quality source. The next thing is your phone calls. That's all there is left. Let's get your recorded phone calls and let's listen to those.
Yep.
And that's a sticking point I'm finding. Like in some of our coaching, folks are afraid to bring that out in front of the others because they're hearing about you doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in ink already, and they haven't gotten anything ink. And I say, guys, this is a team effort. You might not be ahead of him right now, but like Matt, for example, he was a slow start. People were inking deals like crazy, but people that were inking deals like crazy still didn't outdo him once he got his first deal. He was like in the 5th month until he got his first deal, but he took off running.
Right.
And he made $250,000 in the last quarter.
Let's go.
Right. That's what he made the whole year before, but it took him a while to get there. And he had to come to the group and say, guys, I'm not getting, something's not working for me. And he had to say that in front of a group of 10 or 12 people in his group. So that's why I encourage people, use these metrics. If you've completed this quantity and in this way, something's wrong.
100%.
Bring this up. Let's figure out what to do about it.
Man, so the 3 biggest things I focus on whenever I'm doing sales training for people, and I'm not trying to plug myself here, but really just talk about in terms of getting results, right? You need leads. Not hard to figure out. But like, man, I hate when
Glenn Ross, the leads aren't usually bad.
Yeah, they're really not, right? So you got a human that owns a piece of a property. Let's talk to him, right? Right. Probably a problem here.
And if they're in default, that's qualified to me. There's no Jordan would say, I need more research to determine more things about them so I can have a better hit rate. But for me, they own property, they're in default. I want to talk to those people. Yep. Let me get on the phone with them.
All day, especially if I find some stuff with ownership or I find some stuff with, I don't know, encumbrances. I know you guys do a lot of stuff with liens and judgments. Like you can figure out how to target that stuff, pick a direction
and run.
That's what we did. We dove into, family stuff with ownerships, and that's what we've been focused on, and it's working, right? So I'm like, why rock the boat, man? It's working. So, that being said, I think, what was the point we were about to hit? We were just talking about
through KPIs. We're talking about metrics, and is that an indicator to fix something?
Just the 3 things I want focused on anybody is, do we have leads, right? If we don't, we don't need to talk about anything else. Get freaking leads in your door, right? Go pull a list, get somebody on Fiverr to go clean it up for you. Skip trace them, start making some calls, right? The second thing is where we look at our KPIs. Are you doing enough work to actually get a result? Well, I talked to 2 people last week. That's great.
Ain't enough.
More. Do more, right? A lot of times it's just crank up the output. And then the third thing is call reviews. We do call reviews at the wazoo. So like my program is really just KPIs and call reviews, pretty much all I do. Wow. But people get a lot of results because those are the 2 biggest leverage points you can have in acquisitions as long as you have leads. If you don't have enough leads for us to play with, you can't do enough of the output to get a result. And if you can't have the skill of the sales in that machine,
that's where you'll fail.
Yep, exactly. But when you get it all to work together, man, what a beautiful thing it is, right? And I've talked to a couple of your guys on your teams out there. Like, you got some very talented salespeople out there that understand inputs, outputs, that understand how to talk to prospects and work a pipeline. So, man, it's just when you get to truth. I love that you said our KPIs are about the same, because I think you find when you start comparing notes with other people that are winning, the truth just comes up. Hey, this is what works.
Mhm.
Of course, we're all talking about it, right?
Now, the next step is how do we get our numbers to match? What that ends up being is how do you manage your business? How many salespeople do you have? How well do you negotiate the offers? What properties are you targeting? Are you targeting low price point, mid or high? What markets? I try not to target something deep middle of West Texas, the middle of nowhere. I try to stick to the big MSAs.
Yeah.
There are all these things that once you get this thing stabilized and working, you now say, okay, it works.
Yep.
How do I make this bigger? How do I make this better?
Yep.
That's the next round of KPIs, so to speak.
100%. 100%. I think that's where we talk about process at scale, right? So like it's really easy to do things on your own in the sense of everything's in your brain. But in order to like duplicate a salesperson, this is where I got forced into like scripting and process. Like, man, I got to teach these people what to do, right? How do I do that if I don't know what I'm doing, man? So we got to get some repetitions under us, create some process. I train on Google Docs. Like,
oh wow,
I'm basic, man. I write up a Google Doc. They're pretty good Google Doc, man. You can ask Kyle. I've shared a couple in our group calls. But people don't need big old PowerPoints and fancy flow charts. And do they help? Sure. But I train on Google Docs, man. I write out a document. Simple. I keep it simple. I find I can communicate well with my words. It's a strength of mine. So I can do that both orally and with writing. And people get it, right? From there, it's KPIs and call reviews, man. We do that enough times, we'll get some deals.
So let's talk about those KPIs and call reviews for this calendar year. Well, let's say like a business year, maybe starting. We start our program in March. If you had a forecast, and I know it can be tricky, but if you were going to try to forecast what you think a net is going to look like for 12 months from March to March, what do you think that looks like in
our business?
This distressed property business that you're doing?
So let me list a couple of assumptions here because I think full transparency, one of my acquisition managers is going into maternity leave probably next week whenever she pops. So that's rocking a boat. I have a new salesperson identified that's going to join the team in July. So a little bit of a lead time there. So we'll have 2 full-time salespeople, and when she comes back, it'll be 3 again. And then I still, I'm not afraid to hop on the phones and close some deals, but I'm not in it every day, probably similar to you. You're not in it every day on the phones every day, but I'm not afraid to either, right? So all that to say, what I've trained my reps on and where I see us clipping consistently is most of our people are getting into a new deal. We're getting into 2 to 3 new deals every single month per person, right? So sometimes we've had a couple of months where we only get 1, but it's because it's like there were a bunch more co-owners than we thought in here, and there was a bunch of research involved, and there's some nuance in some of these, right? Historically, we were hitting deals where, I think I learned margins need to be no lower than 50 grand.
Yeah.
And I feel like I still need to make some mindset shifts because
sometimes you slip on that a little bit, or sometimes you get margin fade. You can't control that.
Yeah.
But your typical margin definitely needs to be above that.
Exactly. And that's what I'm hearing.
Because you'll do the same work for 20 grand as you will for 200. It's literally the same signatures, the same work, the same sales.
And when I hear that, I'm like, okay, how do I do more of these 200 grand deals, right? So one of my personal Ajay initiatives this quarter is to figure out how to push that up, which is where I'm trying to learn from Mr. Jordan Johns, who's a killer at the research side. So I'm like, man, if I can take what I'm doing and take what he's doing, I'll
tell you a simple hack on that.
Please.
Is when you're filtering your list or you're looking at properties, choose properties that are worth 200 grand or above.
Because on the CAD value?
Yeah, I use CAD because it's a number that's consistent. It's easy to get to. It shows up in all of your lists more or less.
That's fair, yeah.
And some are over, some are undervalued. But when you're looking at that range, typical tax delinquent tax lawsuits, man, they perfect those things and get them going. I bet you the average tax debt is 30 grand or less, if I were to guess. So if you use average numbers, 30 or 200 grand minus 30 leaves 170.
Yeah.
You're going to give, I don't know, let's say 10 or 20,000 at most to these folks. You still leave 125,000 for net. So that works. Now maybe you push the price a little bit to maybe, I don't know, 300, 400.
Right. And I think it's worth noting, generally speaking, with more expensive properties, your conversions tend to go down a little bit. Would you agree with that? I haven't seen that full cycle in this business yet. So if I'm pursuing only $1 million properties, do my conversions change would be the question.
They may. I mean, you're going to have the human element that says, if the property's worth 100 grand, they just care less because what they would walk away with changes their life less. Then if a property's worth $1 million, they're going to look at that as that could change my life. And there's $1 million to me. Well, no, it's not going to work like that. But, I don't know. I mean, we've got a ton of deals that are $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And I think you're looking for the person who's just freaking fed up.
Yeah.
They're done. Many of our better deals aren't the ones where we freshly identify. They're the ones that are already aware of this and they've been trying to solve it forever, but they don't have the solve.
Right.
And that's when we come in and say, we're just going to take your place. I hope we can get it fixed, but you've been trying. We hope we can do better than you did.
Yeah.
But you know how hard this is because you've been trying for years with your uncooperative family. Those people are usually willing to sell. They're interested in a very high priced property for the least amount of money because they're just done.
Yep.
They believe if they couldn't fix it, we probably can't either.
Right. Right.
So conversion, I think you'd want to qualify the conversions to those type of people or the newly aware people that are probably much less likely to want to walk for little dollars.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Okay.
But
so knowing
the
that
probability of having bigger margin is greater when you're calling higher value property.
Right. Right. So we've just been cutting our teeth in Dallas County buying a bunch of ex-trap houses, basically. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's a bunch of, crappy houses in Dallas and they're selling. Don't get me wrong. You'll
also see, if you were to look at the average value of a tax delinquency or tax foreclosure, they're usually lower because when you start getting into the higher values, folks that own property that's more valuable, that have bought it and can manage it, they're a little more sophisticated and they just handle business because that's how they wind up with the more expensive property.
Right, right.
So you get some law of averages working against you on the lower end there.
That makes sense. I guess knowing that, I've been operating on basically 50 grand margin deals is kind of what I've been based it off of.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
the average wholesale margin is like 22,000.
Yeah, I think when we were doing land, it was 14 and some change, just under 15 grand a deal.
It's just 3 times that.
We were just milking them and it was a lot more work. We were spending a lot more on marketing. We had to have an army of VAs. It was a very different business. Whereas now I've just got 3 full-time Americans on my staff and I love my small business, man. Love it, love it. Our overhead's under 15 grand a month, which for some people, maybe that's high. That feels like a joke to me. It
is.
I'm like, I think I can do 4 deals a year.
This is a much more capital efficient business and much more capital, like dollars capital, but the human capital, it's much more efficient on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And now you think about management collateral, like I'm managing less heads. So my revenue per employee is about to skyrocket. So to answer your question of what do I think I'll do in a 12-month run, man, I'm gunning for like a 1.8 to 2 mil net. We'll see. I'm pushing. Don't get me wrong here, Logan. It's going to be a push because
if you put together 700 in equity, it'll probably take you several months to turn that around. But if you duplicate that, that gets you to $1.5 million in the last half of the year.
Right.
So let's say you improve over that time.
That's my goal.
I could see how that would happen.
It's going to be a push. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's easy, but
it's not, but it's okay.
Call me back in 12 months and we'll see where we're at.
I will. All right. So I'm going to take you back now. Let's go to 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
That young Ajay that we were talking about.
When I was 4. No.
Yeah, you were in your teens, you're working at the store, you had ambitions, but you didn't know where you're going yet. What does today's Ajay tell the 10 years ago Ajay? What did that kid need to know that you now do know?
Oh man, what an interesting question. I gotta unpack parts of this too. I don't know. Do you know Matthew McConaughey, the actor?
Yeah.
He had this speech at one of the award shows. I get them all mixed up. But people ask him like, who's your mentor? Right? And he says it's me in 10 years.
Oh, I like that.
I love it, man. So for you to ask this question to me, it has me thinking about, wow, like if I could be talking to 16-year-old me right now, like that gets me kind of emotional, to be honest. And
that's why I ask it.
Yeah.
It should be emotional because no one comes on here unless they have had experiences and life-changing things like you have.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect time to ask about that 10 years ago because that 10 years ago, dude, hadn't had these yet.
Yeah. Man, I think the first thing I would say to myself, continue to trust the Lord because that's been one of the biggest things in terms of like my North Star, man, is just bringing me to good people and good opportunities and blessing me with some good skills and calling me to take action when I need to, right? I think there's such a piece of, again, I was so young, man. I was a teenager in high school, right? When you're a teenager in high school, you're like, where am I going to go to college? What's my first job going to be? Am I going to meet my wife? Like all these things that have unfolded for me, man. I got married last year. Our 1-year anniversary is next month.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it's awesome. Thank you very much, man. My wife is awesome. My life is awesome. I feel so blessed to be able to drive and fly places I want and have a car that's paid off and be making, multi 5 and 6 figures net every single month right now. Like, I think what I'd be telling myself would just be like, it's going to be okay. Don't be afraid to work and like just spend time with people that you love and cut out the people that you don't.
And don't.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like that's what you've done and it's worked. So that kiddo probably didn't know about that, but he needs the affirmation.
100%. 100%.
Somebody asked me that a long time ago on an interview, and I remember saying the first thing that came to mind is it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
At that age, I was scared. I didn't know. I didn't want to have the same family life that I grew up in. I wanted it to be different.
Totally.
And I was nervous and worried and didn't have any money and wanted to have some and all these things. I remember thinking, today I tell myself often, well, it was okay.
Yeah.
So that kid needs to know that too.
And it's cool because it gives you that confidence, man. When you have some skills and you understand business, like, let's say the dollar goes belly up, real estate goes belly up, I don't know, whatever happens.
It'll be okay.
Figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Have a little bit of faith. Have a little bit of faith in yourself.
Yep.
Be okay.
It's going to be okay. But man, that's heavy. You have me thinking about now, Ajay, in 10 years, who that's going to be.
Oh, it's a whole different thing.
Oh my gosh.
So one of the things I talked with Chris is, our growth many times, if we hit our stride, should be like this. So you work, it starts to happen. But I've experienced that when this thing happens, I see this, I'm like, wow, well, I've been through part of mine where it goes like this. And the productivity in the last 12 months and 24 months is exponential.
Right.
Relative to those periods beforehand. And it's shocking because you believe in yourself and you think it's going to happen. You're telling yourself it is. And you tell yourself for that for a long time. But when it really starts to happen, you're like, wow, this is true. It is. I wasn't lying to myself. But the fun part is when your growth curve is like this, it's all popping and it's new and you're wondering if it's going to continue to happen. When the growth curve happens like this, usually for me, what I've found and some other friends, nothing changes in you or what you're doing from this part to that part. It's just this part is actually starting to happen and develop and work. Yeah. Today, this sounds weird, but I work less hard as I did as I was building and growing, but the fruits are happening. Yeah. This is the growth is expanding so quickly off of all the stuff that we did. It's now just happening. I can sit back and that's
how cool is that as a father?
I find that I've got 3 girls and a boy. So I just need to be a good role model for the boy. And as long as he gets the right lessons, sees the right parents, he should hopefully fall on that path. For the girls, I find that I've got to be the man that I want them to try to go seek in their life. Yeah. And if I can be that guy with their mom, then hopefully that's the dude they're going to look for as they go out in the world. Yeah. And frankly, I believe I've set that bar pretty high. I'm a good dude to the wife. I feel like I'm a good dude overall. I've been able to provide resources that is far above average. So like these girls have a high standard, but what I do believe is there are millions of incredible men out there. They know that the hurdle is set high and they believe that their sights will be set higher. Good. They're going to find it. Just, you have to look for that. Right. I remember when I was dating, guys, we talk about dating with single guys. Yep. I remember saying, I'm going to date the hottest girl I can because I'm the one that chooses that. And they're like, what if she doesn't choose you? I'm like, dude, if you're just shooting for the best quality you can, you're going to eventually get lucky. Yeah. So I remember thinking, I'm willing to get what I'm willing to accept. So I was looking for a really nice, caring person. Good. Not just a beautiful woman that was like a piece of shit. I didn't want that.
Plenty of them out there.
I wanted a good mom. I wanted a beautiful woman. I wanted a good human. And I thought, there's a lot of them out there. So that's all I'm willing to accept. Yeah. Well, guess what? I got that. Similarly, I got to continue to be that same thing in the male version. Yeah. So these daughters are going to know
that's what a man looks like.
That's what I got to get.
That's awesome.
So, going back from a long time ago, my dad didn't do that for our family. Similar to your situation. He wasn't that. So I had a man in a male in my life, but I didn't respect his decision. I didn't respect his judgment. I didn't want to be like that. So I was having to search for that on my own. So today, my girls and my son don't have to do that. They should just be able to look at that example in their house and say, "Oh, I'll head that direction." Yeah, that's long answer your short question.
No. I mean, it's something. Again, I'm a newlywed, no kids yet, but it's something on the mind.
Are they going to happen?
Especially, they'll come. They'll come. We want plenty of them, man. We're Catholic, so we're gonna have a lot of them. God willing.
Same.
Right?
Yeah, they happen quick. You know what causes them, and you're not going to stop doing that anytime soon. So they show up, boy. I'll tell you, we got 4. They come.
That's what I hear.
There are a lot of folks that are out there listening to this. They're on the fringes of real estate, or they're in other businesses, or maybe they're in real estate and they're new. What do you need them to know about this business?
Man, so I've not rubbed shoulders with a lot of people in like the multi-million-dollar asset under management type world. So I want to share. I have a limited perspective. I don't have friends that have $1 billion in self-storage or whatever, right? So I've never played that game of high leverage capital allocation in the world of. I don't want to call it fast money because that feels like a disservice to what this business is, but like
I call this the mid capitalization real estate space. This isn't the $100 million fund or the billion. This is mid cap.
It's mid cap, but it's in terms of house wholesaling, land flipping, subdividing, like that type of tier, right? The mid cap where you can make multi 5, 6 figures per deal. I've heard a couple of 7-figure deals. I think they're more rare, right? But really that average is kind of in like that $50,000 to $125,000 margin range. I challenge everybody listening this to find something that has a better return on ad spend. My ad spend's $200, or if I want to call my cold callers you can make them commission only, or you can give them a little bit of a base like I do. I want to challenge somebody to find a faster cash conversion cycle where I can go discount my properties at 75 cents on the dollar and throw them up on the market like we were talking about. Now, if you have a good wholesale operation, you can get dispo going quicker through like, having your own buyers list and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of the capital efficiency of this business, where I can spend $200 and have 50 grand opportunities sitting on my desk, man, nothing. I've looked at, just like you probably looked at everything under the sun. I can't find anything even close to this right now. Is it the most simple business in the world? No. But is it so complicated?
But almost any other business that you're going to go and make, I mean, we'll do in some years, $30-40 million in sales with massive margins.
Yeah.
Go find me. And dude, I know people that run construction companies that literally do $100 million in revenue and they'll make 10, 12 million in net profit.
Yeah.
Dude, I'll make that. I do make that on significantly less dollars.
Less people, less dollars, less risk. Construction is such a risky business.
40 million in sales to make 15 million in net.
Wow.
And we don't have to run $100 million. Construction is high risk. You can mess those jobs up and go negative. You got to have bonding capacity at the yin yang.
Yeah.
150 employees. Dude, this is a little shop.
Contracts dry up, man. If you're working with government, it's a whole different ballgame. So yeah, anyways.
You're right.
To your point, construction, no thank you. It's been funny as I've thought about, what opportunities could even be better than this if I wanted to make 8 figures a year, and I'm not seeing anything right now, especially with my current skill set and the landscape today. And the last thing I'll say, Logan, is this is the only real estate business I have ever been a part of where I am genuinely not afraid of a recession. Because I look at it and I'm like, dude, I'll just drop my prices. Right?
Buyer pool does slim up.
Sure.
Premiums go away. It takes longer to sell, but since I've been in this business, I started in 2014, I guess is when it was. We've had the pandemic where the bottom fell out, and then we had when interest rates shot up about a year and a half ago.
Yep.
In both of those times, we had some adjustments to make, but our business was never at risk. We never had like fundamental problems.
Right.
And I can't count how many people's businesses that failed, that went under, the bankruptcies, the divorces. None of us came anywhere near that. So I feel really good that we've done, I don't know how we would weather a depression, but we preserve enough capital that, I can live for years and years and years and years on just capital that's sitting around.
Yeah.
So I think we'd have enough time to figure something else out if that happened.
Man, and even in a depression, like money needs to flow in some capacity.
Right.
I'll just go follow the flow, man.
Somewhere.
It's somewhere, right? I used to joke with my wife where I was like, you know what? If whoever's president happens, economy goes belly up, we'll get into the credit repair business. Everyone's going to be maxing out the credit cards. We'll do debt reconciliation. We'll figure it out. There's always money flowing somewhere. There's always a problem in the world that needs solved. There is. In terms of just like as an individual human, there's always a multi 6 or 7 figure opportunity that's not that hard to figure out, learn, and execute on pretty quickly.
That's right. Now that you've gotten to this point, that's your new base.
It's my baseline, yeah.
Watch as the years change. That's
what I'm hoping. I want to be like Logan when I grow up, man.
Ajay, this has been a blast. I really appreciate you coming. I think a big piece, I've said this earlier, I think a big piece that's missing in this line of business is the salesmanship.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of people training for that stuff. We don't have a lot of people in experience. This is a lot of technicians. I appreciate you sharing this with folks. And I know that you do training. So if people have interest in getting trained or becoming better at sales for the land business, this business, or other businesses, Where do they need to find you?
Yeah, man, I'm super active on Instagram. So at investing with Ajay, DM me there. I look at probably 90% of my DMs. If you catch me on a vacation, I might miss it. But other than that, hit me up on Instagram and yeah, we'll chit chat and get something going.
Cool. We're going to grab his info and put it in our caption here so it's easy for you to get a hold of him simply. Ajay, thanks for coming, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.